And on that note, I think we should be live now. I'm hoping you can all hear me loud and clearly. And if so, welcome once again to Beyond the Breakthrough, the kind of live chat call-in thing show for Psychonauts to just call in and be part of this platform and sort of have a conversation about anything related to psychedelics. As you can see from my appearance, this is the festive Christmas special. I've spared no expense. I blew the entire budget. Basically everything that anyone ever sent me on Patreon, I invested in this fine hat, this fine Santa elf hat. I think it puts a whole new slant on the phrase machine elves. So yeah, I'm hoping you appreciate this kind of big budget blowout here. I've absolutely spared no expense. I can stop fucking around with my hair. But yeah, I hope you're all feeling super festive and Christmassy. I must say, I am. I absolutely love Christmas time. It's one of my favourite times of the year. Kind of ties into that kind of thing of, Christmas is a really big deal in the UK where I'm from. And then, from being a kid, and then as you grow up and you've got your own kids, and the magic then happens with them. And this year, it's been, normally it's a kind of a big family time for us. But for the last couple of years, we've not been able to do that because we live in Switzerland. And usually people either come over here to Switzerland to visit us or we go back to the UK. Of course, the pandemic completely fucked all over those plans. So we've not seen our family for about the last, probably like 2 years now. But this time we're going to fly back to the UK, and there's a few little pesky tests and stuff that we have to go through, but it's so far, fingers crossed, it looks like we're still going to be able to make it. So we're all, me, Rachel and the kids, we're flying back to the UK this Friday on Christmas Eve. We're going to get there quite late on Christmas Eve, and we're going to then spend the between Christmas and New Year with our friends and family, just catching up with everyone. So we're really looking forward to that. It does mean that there's not going to be any content for at least the next couple of weeks, because obviously just kind of time off over Christmas time, I'll be away from all my equipment. I'll be in the UK. I might, I'll still be on Discord and stuff like that, so I'll still be talking to you guys. But yeah, I'm not going to be making any videos for the next couple of weeks. And for this particular format, this Beyond the Breakthrough, this is the last one, obviously, of 2021. I am planning on carrying on with this format. I'm going to start it again in 2022, probably around mid-January sometime. But I have had the idea to spin this off into a separate channel for a couple of reasons. One, I think it's its own kind of format, and what I want to be able to do, because some of the conversations that we've had doing this, I've absolutely loved. And I'm going to do this, you probably see this with other YouTubers where they have a long form conversation, but then they cut it up into clips so that, people can find individual conversations and then sort of post it as mini clips. And I thought if I did that in the main channel, it would kind of clog up the main channel and sort of take over a little bit. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to spin this off into a separate side channel called Beyond the Breakthrough. And then I'll sort of do that within that channel. It also gives me a bit of a backup, a bit of a secondary channel, so that if there's ever any reason that I can't get into my main channel, I'll be able to still post stuff in the second channel. So it gives me a sort of a bit of redundancy there. But yeah, I'm going to make this its own thing. Feel free to tell me what you think of that, if it's a good idea, bad idea, whatever. It doesn't mean I'm going to take anything away from the old channel. I think as you've seen recently, I'm still posting sort of the usual kind of content that I do, as well as doing this. So it's just I'm kind of broadening the scope a little bit, turning it into a bit of a Psychonaut media empire rather than just kind of putting everything in the one channel. And I was thinking as well possibly moving the long form conversations, so when I talk to guests and it's these bigger sort of an hour and a half, 2 hour conversations, maybe moving them across into the Beyond the Breakthrough thing. But I've not decided yet fully. I might keep them as part of the main channel. But yeah, let me know what you think of that. And I'm hoping that you guys, that works for you guys, and that you'll also sort of subscribe to that channel and be a part of that. So I'm going to set that up probably over Christmas, New Year, and I'll be posting sort of links on Discord and on the main channel. And like I say, it's just more to sort of have a bigger family of more focused Psychonaut channels. So the main channel then will remain the kind of the the video essay, kind of me being a smart ass, giving out my opinions and explaining stuff. That'll stay within this kind of format within the camper van, and that will be the main Adeptus Psychonautica channel. And then the Beyond the Breakthrough will have its own sort of setup, and I'll probably maybe even create a different background for it and stuff like that. Who knows? We'll see how it goes. So that's kind of what's happening with me over Christmas. But what's been happening with me in general? So, actually, just before I get into that, I should probably go through my spiel of explaining the format. So, as I mentioned, the gist of this live stream is for you guys to be able to call in and have a conversation with me and speak to the sort of the wider Psychonaut community. The way that you do that, if you want to be a guest speaker, then you need to join the Discord channel. The links and descriptions of how to do that the links how to do that should be in the description below. So basically, you join the Adeptus Psychonautica Discord channel, and then there is a channel within that called Stream Calling. Click into that. You'll have some options to be able to ask to speak, to raise your hand to ask to speak. If I can see that your hand's raised, I will click a button. It will bring you up here, and then your audio will then be broadcast live as part of this. I'll just show you quickly where that lives. So you should be able to see a little screenshot on screen. So you can see in the top left corner, there's one called Stream Calling. Just join that channel on the Adeptus Psychonautica Discord server. And yeah, we can have a chat about some stuff. Whoops. There we go. So, but just before we get into all that, I just want to talk a little bit about what I've been up to since we last spoke. Because I've been. It's been a very interesting month for me in December. I think I mentioned a little bit last time that I've been doing quite a bit of experimenting with DMT over, pretty much like the last month. And what I've been doing is, I suppose you could call it microdosing, but it's not. What I've been doing is variable doses of DMT. Pretty much every day for about the last, probably about 30 days now. And when I say variable doses, this might be anything from like a sort of a 10 milligram dose up to a sort of a kind of a, sub-breakthrough dose up to the experience that I had last night, which was doing DMT along with an MAOI inhibitor. Sometimes I think Minty refers to this as Vaporhuasca. So basically what happens when you take an MAOI, this is the component which stops DMT wearing off so quickly. Normally when you take DMT, the reason it's got such a short acting effect is that you have this enzymes in your body called monoamine oxidase. And if you inhibit these monoamine oxidase, then it stops it breaking down DMT quite so quickly, so you get a much longer and much more vivid trip. And so that's what I did last night. I took an MAOI called Harmless or Harmaline. I took some of that and then smoked some DMT. And holy shit did I have an experience last night. It was fucking bonkers. But I think, I want to talk a little bit really about not just the experience last night, but the experience as a whole of this last 30 days of basically changing your consciousness every day for 30 days. And again, not always changing it in a way where you're having this full breakthrough experience. So it wasn't like hyperspace. Sometimes it was just, so kind of like a I was going to say a background effect then, but that's not true, because I don't think there is such thing as that there's a background effect with DMT. There's always, even at its lowest doses, DMT is one of the most psychedelic substances. So yeah, even taking like a 10 milligram dose, the room is just pretty bananas, and you're having very you feel like the ingress of what's called like the DMT realm come into your thoughts in these little flashes. And it's interesting that my kind of motivation for doing this, I wanted to see what it was like to have this different perspective every day. And the example I would use here is like if you had something which gave you a different perspective every day. If every day, for like the period of a month, you were stood at the top of a mountain and you could look out and just, see the town that you live from a different perspective. Or if every day for a month, just for like 5 minutes, you could be in space. Say you're on the ISS space station orbiting the planet, and you're just looking down and you've got that different perspective, like, right, yeah, this kind of changes the way I think about things. And that's really what I was doing, just every day, just having a different perspective on it. And yeah, it's very interesting to do DMT at those kind of doses. And like I said, these doses were varying from the very small up to the kind of like the usual. And because when you do it in these kind of doses, and this, some of you might be figuring out, this is one of the reasons why, I put out the video yesterday around DMT and vaping devices and vaping these e-juices. It's because that's pretty much what I've been doing for the last month, and that's why it came to my attention that people were charging ridiculous prices for these things, and I thought, shit, I need to say something about this. So yeah, when you do it in these kind of gradual doses, not necessarily going from zero straight to breakthrough, then you really get to see the mechanisms of how DMT works on your brain as it leads up to this breakthrough. And like things like I noticed were how my thoughts started speeding up, like literally speeding up, like the words in my head would start speaking about something, and I could hear it. And I also noticed things like the tones within my head. What I mean by that, I have tinnitus, so I have like ringing in my ears. It's kind of it kind of varies from being sometimes very background where it's not bothering me to sometimes sort of quite loud. And I noticed as I was going into the DMT sort of experience, these tones would change. I could hear, they were like going up by like semitones, or like the waveform was pitching, so it's like going ooh yeah. So like it was really interesting to be able to hear that, because normally you don't experience it. You go from like whoa, and you're straight into the breakthrough. But yeah, it's been really interesting, and I'm going to do a much more in-depth video sort of detailing my kind of analysis of this, like a kind of forensic exploration of what it's like to do these kind of daily DMT doses, and just sort of play around with your models of reality. Because I think that's one of the kind of conclusions I came to with doing DMT, is that really what you're doing here is altering the model of the model that you have for reality. You are changing it. And when I was doing this MAOI dose last night, I was doing it with Rachel, and we were talking about how weird the kind of the weirdness of DMT is, because I think with a lot of substances, when people take them, you take them expecting that you are going to spectate something. You take them thinking that you're going to sit there and like watch something unfold in front of your eyes. And certainly you get this kind of experience, like when you take, like recreational doses of LSD. You take LSD and it's you, but with a bit of an overlay to it. There's things that are a bit sparkly, there's stuff going on, but it's still you spectating an experience. DMT doesn't do that. It rewrites the rules of experience. The very nature of experience itself gets changed. And I think this is possibly one of the reasons why it can be so disconcerting, because the idea that you were going to sit there and spectate this thing becomes absolute bullshit. It's not. It rewrites the ideas of awareness itself, like how you perceive reality. That's why it happens in what feels like this kind of like new dimension. It's happening. It's like the way that you model and interpret reality just skews. It just pivots instantly, and it's so incredible. I've got a bit of a love affair going on with this substance at the moment, because it's just so kind of vivid and in what I mean. I don't need to say all this. I've said it a million times, and everyone knows that DMT's super vivid. But yeah, I'll talk a little bit more about my MAOI experience if there's time. But for now, I want to get into just first of all, I'll just have a quick look through the comments. Someone was asking about in the comments on YouTube about doing breath work on DMT. I've never done breath work on DMT, but I have done breath work after ayahuasca. This was it was like the day after ayahuasca, and I found it very potent. I had a very powerful experience doing it, and I was so skeptical doing breath work. I went into this thinking, oh, this is something to do. It's like it'll be a load of bollocks, and I had a very transformative experience. I was crying my eyes out at the end of it. It was, it was pretty potent. So I've not done breathwork since then. It's one of those things where if I get the opportunity to do it, I would do it. So I would recommend anyone who's if you get the opportunity, don't just dismiss it as bullshit. I think there is something to it. Okay, I'll just do one more comment. So Water's asking in the comments, can you say something about the DMT fear? Yeah, I mean, it's very real. Just 1 second. I think that the DMT fear is the most natural reaction in the world, because as I've just kind of talked around, we are all, in our day-to-day lives, we are all operating within, we have an operating model of reality. I know that if I stand up, I'm going to stick to the floor. I know what my interaction with myself looks like. When I interact with other people, I've got an idea, I understand what that's going to look like. I understand what the objects around me are going to interact with like. So I have a grounded model of reality with which I can use to navigate the world. And it does feel like, without any kind of like meditative practices or sort of exercise in this area, but I think for the most people, it does feel like you are a spectator within your own head, and you are. So this is it's almost like you're a pilot in your head, and you are spectating your experience. And this is one of the things that meditation tries to get you out of is to stop you thinking about that you are in your head and start to think of that you are like you are a field of consciousness. You are having a conscious experience, and everything that is happening within your experience, within your field of vision, every sound that you hear, that is your consciousness. It's all your consciousness. The kind of like the bubble of things which I am interacting with, whether it's a sound in the background or whether it's Rachel, it's all my conscious experience. It's not that I'm a pilot in my head having a conscious experience. So when you take something like DMT, which throws away the rule book and introduces a brand new world of where anything goes in the most spectacularly extravagant, manner, then of course your brain is going to recoil from that. Your brain's going to say, no, fucking don't do this. Like, even though you know that this is going to be like a magical, super fun experience, then it's a perfectly natural reaction to like, don't fucking do it. It's kind of like when you go on a roller coaster and you're going in for a fun time. You're in for like an awesome time, but there is a part of which is like, what the fuck am I doing here? And, you're on a boat and like someone starts rocking the boat, and there's very little chance the boat's actually going to capsize, but it's still like, fucking stop it. Your brain doesn't like having its model of reality to be disturbed. So yeah, I think I think the DMT fear is very natural, and so the way I would suggest to overcome that is to sort of approach it as a kind of like an agreement with your body. You've got to work with yourself, let's say, and kind of like really first kind of like ground yourself. Like, okay, I acknowledge that I'm feeling fear, and yeah, this fear serves a purpose because it reminds me of the magnitude of what I'm about to do. So you're not going into this lightly. You're like, okay, yeah, what I'm doing is I'm about to pull the rug out of my perception of reality. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Some of us need our perceptions of realities to be pulled out. Sometimes you need that kick in the arse. Sometimes you want to have, to be shown that you're not the most important, person in the whole world, and that the whole universe revolves around you, and sometimes you need that, like, whoa, I am humbled by this, like. So just, I would say that the way around the kind of fear is just to acknowledge it, acknowledge that this is real, remember the reasons why you're wanting to have this experience in the first place, and then work with yourself to, like, okay, can I find that moment of peace where I can do this? And what I'd find is that usually if I'm honest with myself in that way, then I find that the fear will subside, and I can then go ahead and have the experience. So hope that helps. And with that, I will move on to some of the callers. So I think the first one is Antoni. So Antoni should have a little button which says you can speak, a little to accept. Hello.
Hello. Hear me? Is that everything working?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hi, Rob. How are
mate.
you?
I'm good, mate. And you?
Yeah, I'm really great. It's such a good opportunity that you made, that we can call you and just have a conversation. I love that. Me
too, mate. It's one of the, people talk a lot about, like, psychedelic communities. I really believe in this concept of community. I don't want to, big up myself, but, I do have this platform, and I want to share it with you guys. So I'm glad to have the opportunity, and honestly, the pleasure's mine that people even want to call in and have a conversation with me. So what's on your mind, dude?
Yeah, I had a couple questions for you, but before, I wanted to say that as well. I just really, I'm sorry, I'm just a bit nervous. I'm really grateful for how you go around your work, how you are, because there is a lot of people out there who just make a bad reputation for some of the Psychonauts, So I'm just really glad how you do it. And
thanks, mate.
Yeah, great work.
Cheers, dude. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about. Have you heard about the Psychedelic Society?
Psychedelic Society? Well, it depends which one, because I believe there's. I mean, if we're talking about the same thing, the Psychedelic Society as a kind
of in UK.
The one in UK. I think there's chapters of it in the UK. So the one I'm aware of was the one in Manchester. But I believe there's, like, psychedelic societies in all over the place, with, like, particularly normally tied to one of the universities. But I don't know if I've got that. Maybe I've got that wrong. But there is definitely a psychedelic society in Manchester, which is where I'm from. And I was actually supposed to be speaking at one of their meetings, and that was just before the pandemic hit. So
all right.
Yeah. But I mean, is that the one you meant? The one in Manchester, or is there a different one?
Well, I think so. Honestly, I wasn't aware there is more of them.
So, yeah. As far as I'm aware, it's a kind of it's a bit, it's like a. But I mean, psychedelic society is quite a sort of a broad term anyway. So I think it's a bit like, there's like you have like Burning Man. You know what I mean? Like Burning Man is an event, and it's an event in a particular place. But there is this bigger, wider, like Burning Man society kind of thing, where there's like chapters all over the place.
Yeah, of course, I get it. Yeah, okay. I was just curious about your thoughts about this particular group of people, but I wasn't aware there's more of them. So I guess the question is not actual anymore.
well, let's explore it anyways. So my thoughts about, like, groups like that is that I think, on the whole, I don't have any particular experience of that group, because, like I say, I don't live in the UK anymore, and I was hoping to meet them and say do a talk at one of their meetings. But on the whole, I think, like, physical groups like this, I think are an extremely positive thing. I've got a couple of like physical groups here in Switzerland which I attend, and I've met some really good friends through it. In fact, one of the people who I've had on the show a couple of times is she's a psychoanalyst called Mackenzie. I met her through a face-to-face psychedelic meetup. So we have this kind of, there's a group here in Switzerland called, like, Psychonauts of Zurich, and people sort of come and we meet up, and we just meet in a bar and have a few drinks, or sometimes we have like integration groups. And I think this is like a really good extension of something like this. This is like a virtual kind of psychedelic community, and we've got this, and we've got the Discord server, we've got things going on Reddit, and I'm putting out content. But face-to-face meetings where you can network and where you can find out about things happening in your area, maybe maybe there's someone who's doing like some kind of medicine retreat in your area, just having contacts of where you could perhaps people give you tips on like growing mushrooms or extracting DMT and all these things. This, to have like real physical friends, is always a huge bonus. So I would encourage everyone, as part of their kind of like psychonaut mental diet, so to speak, just reach out, get in touch with other people, find out what's happening near you. One of the things that I used to find these groups in Switzerland, because when I moved out here, I didn't know anybody. Me and the family, we came out here. We left all our friends behind in England, and you kind of have to build that network again. And I used, I think that two things I think are really good for finding these things. Facebook, just if you go on Facebook and search for, and I hate to say this, I'm not a fan of Facebook at all.
Me neither.
Yeah, but it has a purpose. When it comes to finding groups of things, I think Facebook kind of useful there. And then the other one is that there's a site called Meetup, and this is where you can go in there, you can put in your interests, and it will suggest groups around you. So like, I like doing things like board games and playing poker and stuff like that. So you can put them in, and it would showed me what groups there were in Switzerland, and one of them was these psychedelic groups. So I went and sort of met up with them, and I've made some like friends, people who I now consider some of my like best friends. So I'm hoping that the one in Manchester would offer similar potential. So, but I don't know. Did you ever attend any of their meetings?
No, that's why I was asking you, because I was wondering, is that a community worth connecting to, or is it just another bunch of, actually, everyone's different, I don't want to say anything wrong, but you know what I mean? Just avoiding communities which would lead you into some kind of fanaticism or just weird behavior. Yeah.
I think, what I would, the only one I can really speak to was the person who at the time was the organizer. Off the top of my head, I think she was called Emily. She was really nice. She was a fan of this channel. That's how I found out about that particular group. She reached out to me after watching some of my videos and asked me to come and speak there. So she was cool. I don't know if she's still running that group, or even if the group's even still running, because again, pandemic happened and everyone got locked down and nobody socialized for like a year or so. But what I find with those groups, when we're talking about that kind of like fanaticism and stuff like this, and this also applies to like things like ayahuasca retreats. When you go on a retreat, you are joining a group. It's a group of strangers. It's a group, you've got no particular control over that group. These will be people who come from all walks of life, all over the planet, and then you're basically stuck together for a week or longer even.
Yeah, right.
So
I've heard you talking about it. Yeah. Yeah.
So you have to. I think when you approach any kind of group situation like this, you have to approach it with a kind of a confidence and a sort of securedness within yourself, because you kind of going to a group where people are going to have some. It goes like saying people are going to have some strong ideas about some very wacky stuff. Not everyone's necessarily going to be in agreement. You are bound to find people who are into aliens, conspiracy theories. You're going to find people who don't care about any of that stuff. You're going to find people who are sort of, completely unsure about it. Maybe some people who are actually having a tough time about like not quite sure how to handle some of this stuff, and they're looking for people to help sort of guide them through it. So you're going to find all kinds of people, and the kind of the way to approach these things is to, and I think I'd say this is true of any community, any particular like online community, like just no one's kind of like got the answers to anything, to everything. You don't have to go there and accept what people sort of as saying the reason to go to something like this is to have a social kind of experience, just with people who have had a similar experience to you. You don't have to agree with them, you don't have to argue with them, you don't have to convert them to your way of thinking. Obviously, if someone's getting in your face and trying to say, say you've got to think the way I think, then that person's a dickhead, and just say, yeah, dude, I'm not interested in your, you get this a lot, when I've been with people saying they're trying to get you to, what do you think about this conspiracy? And I'm like, I'm just not interested. What? You don't think there's conspiracies? It's like, yeah, okay, I think there's conspiracies, but I'm not interested. I
feel you.
Yeah. So because you get it, like it's the same with any kind of human interaction. You'll always get people crowbarring shit in. It's like the classic kind of thing of like, when you having Christmas dinner or something like that, don't talk about religion, don't talk about politics. It's like this, it's the same kind of thing.
Never works.
Yeah.
Right.
But but when people are talking about their own experiences, the way I kind of always approach things is somebody's subjective experience is their experience. It's never wrong to talk about your subjective experience, to say, I had this experience and I think it meant this, or it meant this to me. That's my experience of it. And, I could say within that, I believe I was talking to God. I believe I was talking to my dead mother. This was my experience, and that's fine. People can have their experience. I would never try and take somebody's subjective experience from them. That's an entirely different thing from someone saying, I had an experience and this is actual fact, and you need to get on board. You need to get your head around my experience. I'm telling you this is now the truth and you need to accept it. That's where you can say to someone, dude, that's your experience. I respect your experience, but that's not my experience, and I don't necessarily agree with it. If you want to talk about it, let's talk about it. Let's see if we can find some common ground in our experiences. And I think this is where these kind of groups think, where you can have really productive conversations with people you don't agree with. But if someone's trying to say to you, like,
100% agree.
Yeah. But if someone's trying to say to you, like, I know, you don't know, here's how it is, blah blah blah. I mean, this is why I make videos, calling people out saying, like, dude, no, fucking that's your experience. It's not necessarily the truth, right? It's not a fundamental axiom of reality. That's just your experience, and it doesn't make it any less real.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
So,
that's what I think that is distinguishing the great minds from the other more average minds, that they question more, probably.
yeah, and also just accept more. And it's when I talk about accepting, it's not, you're not accepting what they say as truth. It's their truth. You're listening. It's I guess it's about, like, sort of, seeing people and listening to them and hearing their story and finding a common ground. And if people are prepared to do that, I mean, I love hearing people's stories. I absolutely love it. It's sitting around and hearing, like, people talk about, these fantastic adventures that they went on and how they interpreted it and what it meant to them and how it changed them. I can listen to that kind of stuff all day in whatever poetic, fluffy language they use. So that's.
But there are still stories, right?
Well, it's their story and it's their reality. It doesn't make it any less real. So, like, you can map this onto almost anything. If I can tell you about, my love for Rachel, or I can tell you about drinking ayahuasca and how it helped that come to terms with my, with my mother's suicide. It's my reality. It was real and it happened to me, but it's not like, it doesn't kind of.
Yeah, but you just make a difference between experience and reality.
Yeah,
I understand you. Yes.
Yeah, it's the difference between subjective and objective, and I think this is the thing that sort of people struggle with, and also just kind of the difference between having an experience and integrating it and making that into something that's relevant to you, rather than having an experience and taking it on completely on face value and saying, no, in order to validate this experience, every other fucker needs to agree with me. Like, you need to, like, it's important that you all agree with me that aliens exist, because they're taking over the world and shit. It's like, yeah, I'm not interested.
But they do, Rob.
I know they do. And that's where I was saying, be confident and secure enough in yourself just to say, that's fine. That's your experience, but I'm not interested in that. And then, and if someone's badgering you and getting in your face, then it's like, dude, okay, look, I'm ending this conversation, and then just move on to the next person in the group. Because you don't have to listen to sort of people's bullshit, but you can be respectful of it. Just as an example, when I was in Peru this last time, there was a few of us sat around a table, and we're having a conversation, and then somebody said something which led to basically the conversation around gender, how many genders there are, what's going on with transgender people, that kind of thing.
Oh God.
Yeah. Exactly. and so people started piping up, and there was obviously, people had different opinions, and I was getting a bit heated, and I said, guys, this is not what you come on retreat for. Like, let's not talk about, you've got your opinions, you're not going to settle it here, and this is not the place for it. Yeah. And they were like, right, yeah, okay. And you
never know, one day you take ayahuasca and you may discover your gender, right?
For sure, yeah. And again, that's...
No, I'm joking.
Well, no, but I would say that it's the same thing, mate. That I've not got an experience of what it's like to, have like body dysmorphia, or to not feel comfortable in the body that I'm in. That, just like I've described, is somebody else's subjective experience. And
of course,
if somebody else feels like, I respect somebody else's subjective experience, but I don't want to fucking debate it, especially not when I'm trying to spend a week completely off my tits on psychedelics, trying to understand my own fucking experience. Never mind,
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
so yeah, I think if you just respectfully ask people to sort of dial it down and just put, guys, put it in the right context, then usually people will agree. And the people that don't, well, then you can say, okay, you're a dickhead.
Yeah, right. Rob, can I ask you a couple more questions?
Of course you can, mate. Yeah, of course.
Right. I wanted to ask more practical questions, because I've taken salvia myself, but never DMT, and I'm really curious about that. You spoke about DMT a bit before we called right now on this stream, but I still don't get from anyone I've listened to or read, because, when you take DMT, you're sometimes going in, I don't know what about you, but if I go in, I would be hoping to be able to look for some things that I'm curious about, or perhaps maybe remember a question that I want to ask, whatever I meet there. So whatever it may be, again, my subconscious as well, we're not in touch right now. So can you remember that stuff? Can you remain as yourself during the trip?
Interesting question. I would say you very much do remain as yourself. I think this is one of the distinguishing features of DMT. It doesn't have a drunk, what I call a drunkenness to it. Like when you take say like LSD, or even when you take ayahuasca.
Yeah, and salvia as well. It takes you.
There's a feel, there's a sway to it. You've had something. When you take vaped DMT, you feel crystal clear. This is why people are kind of refer to it feeling more real than real. You feel more. Your consciousness feels completely alert and completely, in fact, not only alert in ways that it's never felt before. It really does feel like a sixth sense has turned on. It is a new way of experiencing it. This is not about. People talk about it being visual. It's nothing to do with your eyes. You're right. Your eyes have got nothing to do with it. Your ears have got nothing to do with it. This is completely happening in this kind of this conscious experience, and it's very a good sort of analogy for it is a bit like in the movie The Matrix, bit where Neo's kind of doing his training, and they plug him in, and it takes him to this kind of like white room. And it's it's like kind of like that. It rewrites the reality around you, and so you are hyper aware of it, but then within that kind of hyper awareness, you are then going through what is an incredibly vivid and often kind of bizarre bizarre in the most amazingly awesome way. So this is where the kind of like the roller coaster or the spaceship effect comes in. It's, yes, you're hyper aware, but what's going on is, and in the literal sense of the word, extraordinary. It's bonkers. It's, you know, and so the idea that you're going to kind of pull out your notepad and start thinking, right, yeah, I've got these questions, it just goes out the window. You are flying through the universe at 1,000,000 miles an hour, transforming into every single possible variation of life while in communication with what feels like autonomous entities. You're doing this in ways of experience that you cannot comprehend. It's so strange and powerful. So I would say, and it's also the experience itself is so vivid that you are reacting to it. So you don't really, this idea that you are a spectator where you sit and go, actually, I've got a few questions for you. Forget it. It's not going to happen. It really is a roller coaster.
My question was inspired a bit by the speeches of Terence McKenna, who was describing sometimes, of course, when he was meeting the entities, right? They tell him, don't give yourself away to wander. But on the other hand, sometimes he described that he was able to actually speak like what's on his mind, actually, you know, just bring his personality into it and keep his wits in a way, as he said.
Yeah. It's funny because you do kind of do that. One of my own experiences was where I was in kind of what felt like a cosmic womb, and I was kind of surrounded by these entities, and they were kind of like beaming love and acceptance and just this feeling of family into me. And I was just kind of, I was like a newborn star baby in the middle of this cosmic birthing ground. And I was talking to them, but what I wanted to say to them was, "But I love you. This is amazing. I love you. You're kind of, if you were like literally there, you would be on your knees in like, I cannot believe this. This is, I need to tell you how much this experience means to me. I need to tell you how incredible this is." And they're sat there like communicating telepathically, saying, like, we know. It's of course this is amazing. We know it's how it is. This is the DMT world. And so you are you, but you are, oh God, it's a kind of a hard one to describe. You are reacting in the only way you can react, and part of that will be to try and talk. I mean, it's some of it. Oh God, this is it's so strange because you have like.
Right, I guess you've got to try it.
Yeah. It's not one thing. It's because this is one of the other kind of cool features of it. You have this kind of multiverse effect going on where basically every possible anecdote you've ever heard about DMT all happens at the same time. So like any time that you've heard me talk about DMT, it's like these things all go on like instantly. You will be having this cosmic birth while you are sort of also talking, you know, mathematics to, you know, to like sci-fi aliens, whilst also in, you know, experiencing like in a crystal chamber which looks like the background of this, you know, this live stream. It's all going on at the same time, and it's part of what just makes it so amazing. It's the capability of your brain to have an experience like that is just dumbfounding, to be honest. But I mean, all I'd say is, yeah, I mean, just at some point, if you get the opportunity, just try it. It's I think it is, out of all the substances that I've ever tried, I think DMT is, yeah, the most extraordinary, mind-blowing experience available to a human being. I'm not saying it's necessarily the most useful, or it's necessarily like the one that'll give, you know, if you're looking for like healing or whatever like that. It's not necessarily the one that I would use to overcome trauma. But in terms of if you want the most unbelievable, extraordinary experience that a human being can possibly have, I would say it's DMT, beyond a shadow of a doubt.
Right. Okay, I see. So that also connects to another question, which is directly linked to the previous one, when it comes to the music direction of the trip, because obviously some of the people would put drumming or trance music or some kind of meditation audio background, but then I guess if it's not your eyes, it's not your ears, you go somewhere else, probably putting your favorite song wouldn't really matter to you anymore, because you wouldn't be even aware of that, right?
I think the audio is an element. I think audio is an element in any trip. Now, there's a difference between when you how much you are aware of the audio. You sort of you lose track of like the audio in the room, and it becomes something else. This is a little bit like what I mentioned at the beginning, where I talk about how you can hear your brain, the way your brain speeds up. So, but audio definitely has an impact, and I mean, I certainly notice this, the difference between, say, like the music that I would listen to if I do trips at home when I was with Rachel, compared to the traditional singing that happens when I'm in Peru when I'm doing ayahuasca. It makes a huge difference. What I would say, and I would say this is true of any sort of psychedelic, I would avoid putting something on which your kind of brain can like lock onto too much. So this is why I think instrumental music is good, or very ambient music, or stuff that's kind of very like floaty and sort of synth wavy. That's just my personal preference. I would say just whatever music you are comfortable with. Sometimes I listen to traditional Peruvian stuff. Sometimes I listen to, like last night I was listening to kind of like trance wavy, sort of synth wavy stuff, like a bit like the kind of stuff I put in that short video I recently uploaded. So it's
yes, so that's what I mean. It's more like a sound background rather than a melody. Because, for example, me as a big fan of movie music, if I put Interstellar, I guess that wouldn't really make any sense, right?
No. I think Interstellar is a good one, and in fact, that was part of some of my psychedelic playlists. I have the Interstellar soundtrack, the Inception soundtrack. That's really good for it.
Yes, definitely.
Stuff like things like Enya, where it's like very kind of floaty, ethereal music, stuff like that. But then, like a couple of weeks ago, I was doing mushrooms. Like me and Rachel were doing mushrooms, and we were listening to Nirvana. And that was kind of all Nirvana, is Alice in Chains and stuff like that. So there's different things for different. Depends what you're going for. I don't think there's a necessarily a wrong thing. It's whatever you are comfortable with, and then I would say listen to that. But also try different stuff. Like if you've never tried tripping with something like Peruvian Icaros, it's really cool. This kind of chanting really takes you into strange places and gives a very different character to what, say, something you're familiar with. So,
and vape to DMT as well.
When me and Rachel first got into vape DMT, pretty much exclusively what we listened to was Peruvian Icaros, and they have a very unique character. Another thing, like soundtracks are really good, like video game soundtracks. We listen to a lot of things like there's video games called Journey and Flow. These are very sort of trippy, ethereal, stuff. Again, very similar to the Hans Zimmer stuff. So there's some really good music, and just find whatever you like, mix it up a bit, and so give yourself the opportunity to surprise yourself with like something you're not necessarily familiar with. I think this is where like playlists on Spotify are really good, because if you put something on off a kind of a mixed playlist, you'll hear stuff which you didn't know before. And a lot of the music that I've come across now is stuff that was introduced to me through playlists. So yeah, I would say Spotify is a really good resource for stuff like that.
There's this weird thing about DMT. Of course, the theory of DMT being peaking at 3 a.m. in the morning, right?
Peaking at 3 a.m. in the morning? I've not. Go on. What's that one?
Have you heard of the idea that the natural DMT in the body peaks in the middle of night?
I've heard of the kind of theory that DMT is related to dreaming, and that we have endogenous DMT, which sort of our brain makes and comes out. It's one of those things where I don't really kind of care about it. Again, not to be kind of flippant, but people get very hung up on like whether our brains make natural DMT. Again, this is another one of these things where ayahuasca groups or psychedelic society people will get very defensive, or they'll be very invested in whether it's true that your brain makes DMT. And I'm like, I don't care. I mean, if my brain made that much DMT, then I probably wouldn't need to smoke DMT. So I think, I don't think it matters whether it makes it or not. It's kind of, if it does, it's interesting, but it's not worth sort of making a religion out of, or it's not. It's like, okay, if there is conclusive proof, which I believe so far there isn't, that brains make DMT and that's responsible for dreaming, then cool. I'm totally down with that.
Right.
As of right now, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there is much to be defensive about. The reason I said that is that I've heard that microdosing of DMT, of course, I have no experience with that molecule, but when you, I've heard about microdosing DMT, how it increases your feeling of beauty, your perception of beauty and music, visually and with, I don't know, I guess all the senses. Not sure if that's true either.
I don't know. And I think DMT is a very tricky one to truly microdose because it's just so short acting.
Right. That's fake news then. Okay.
Well,
changed my life, Rob.
Well, I don't know. Like I say, mate, I described at the beginning, I think there is something to exploring these sub-breakthrough doses and exploring sort of microdosing. And I think microdosing is something worth checking out. Myself, I don't have a huge opinion. I've tried microdosing a few things a few times, like mushrooms, and again, I wouldn't necessarily call what I've been doing with DMT this last month microdosing, because it's. I think of microdosing as something where you do not register the effect. It's happening at such a small level that it's not really affecting your sort of conscious experiences. Yeah. So that's a true kind of microdose, and I think to do that with DMT is very difficult.
My experience with just the reason I said about the middle of the night, my experience was with the music. It connected to what you were saying about the music, how you discovered some of the songs just by putting a playlist. And I remember these moments when I would fall asleep with a playlist and then sometimes just randomly wake up in the middle of the night and realize a song that is just playing is beautiful, it's just unearthly. And then I would save it, I would just put it on so it would be in my favorite playlist, and then I would wake up in the morning, listen to that song again and be like, ew, what kind of trick is that the song is just completely another thing right now. So surely in the middle of the night that was some kind of altered state, which I presume to be DMT.
Yeah, well, I don't think it even necessarily needs to be DMT. I mean, sleep and dream is an altered state. I mean, there is no doubt that dreaming is, I put a lot of stock into the dreaming experience. Something is going on there. You are, again, a dream is a new reality happening completely within your brain, and at the time it feels completely vivid. So yeah, I mean, I think there is something ethereal going on within this kind of dream space that, when just like it is when you hear a piece of music on psychedelics, you think, wow, this sounds amazing, and when you hear it in the morning when you're sober, it's like, it sounded better last night. It sounded much more floaty. So yeah, I don't see any reason why that wouldn't also come with other altered states like dreaming and sleep and stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not sure if we have to finish, or can I ask you some more?
I'll just do one very last quick question, and I'll move on to the next call, mate. So go on.
All right. So that's a more serious question. I'm sorry to finish with that, but I was very curious about that, because on your YouTube account, obviously you admit to grow your mushrooms, to create your DMT, obviously to possess it and intake it. Isn't that some kind of a criminal confession? Like, how do you go about legal side of actually admitting that stuff?
Well, that's just me storytelling. It's my fanciful imagination. It's just me.
Right, I see.
So
you tricked us.
Exactly, mate. But on a more sort of serious note, yeah, there's what I say and what I do are different things. There's no criminal. It would be very difficult to make a criminal case just on me saying I did this. I take I've not. Don't get me wrong. I've not got like a mushroom farm here in my apartment or anything like that. So if the police come through the door, there's really nothing to find. But yeah, and obviously the other thing which I can fall back is that I do travel a lot, and every time I do these things, I'm clearly doing them in a country where it's legal.
Yeah, right. Okay, I see. Thank you, Rob. I look forward to maybe call you another time.
No worries, dude. It's nice speaking to you, Anthony. Bye, mate.
It was really great. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to Magtak, the secular shaman. So you should have a button there where you can accept to come and speak, mate. Hello. Are you there? Magtak, the secular shaman.
Can you hear me?
I can now.
Yeah, I was slamming the button, but it wasn't doing anything.
How you doing, mate? You all right?
Yeah, not too bad. How about you?
I'm really peachy, mate. It's I'm feeling really good after a really powerful experience last night, and just that it's Christmas, and I've got my awesome hat. So how could I not be doing good? Talking to awesome people.
Was that experience the MAOI plus vape DMT?
It was indeed, yeah. It was mental.
Did it last longer, or was it more intense?
Both.
Both.
I think intense is a funny word, because I would say DMT on its own is kind of intense. I would say the MAOI bit slows things down a little bit. It gives a little bit more room to. Doesn't seem as kind of rapid, like a series of experiences being beamed into your brain.
Same roller coaster, but it's going slower, sort of.
Yeah. It's kind of more of a less of a kind of like high speed roller coaster, and more of a kind of a Willy Wonka crazy boat ride.
I don't know if you mentioned it. You hear of so many people and you speak so many people, so you forget who's done what. But have you done Ayahuasca? I think you have.
Yes, I have.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say I'd done it a few times, and I did it. I've not done it now for a number of years, and I did it basically. It was before I did my first trip out to Peru. I wanted to test the water with ayahuasca, just to sort of, before I invested my time and money in going out to Peru, just to see, okay, is there something worth exploring here? So yeah, I did farm ayahuasca by taking Syrian rue and some capsules with some DMT in it, and yeah, I've had quite a few experiences with it, and they convinced me that there was definitely something worth checking out and worth going to Peru to do ayahuasca.
So you think it can be therapeutic on its own merit? It's not like it lacks something from ayahuasca. It's just a different experience, not a subset of the experience.
Well, my opinion on that, and again, this is just purely my opinion. And also bear in mind, it's based on my own experience where I have, I've talked about this, about kind of having trauma from my mother's suicide. So I had a specific set of problems that I was looking to deal with. And I've been using psychedelics since I've been like 14 years old. I do not think, or at least for me, that you get the same kind of healing experience. Like if you have a specific kind of problem and you are looking to heal from that problem, then I think it's natural that you need help from it. It's in the same way that if you having some kind of deep psychological problem, or even a surgical problem, you're not just going to sit there in your room and start hacking at yourself with a knife. You could do that, and you might have some success by doing that, but it would be better to go and reach out into a community which is an expert at that. So this is why you go see a therapist, or you go.
Of course. I was speaking, assuming the same conditions. Let's say there were ayahuasca ceremonies. and Pharmahuasca retreats.
Yeah.
Would you
Yeah.
think that ayahuasca would be quote unquote better, or both would be good healing tools in their own merit?
I think if you are in if there is a framework of healing, whatever that framework is, whether it's therapeutic, clinical, or traditional, I think and this is where people's preferences come in, because not everybody wants to go and sit in the jungle. Some people want to go and sit in a nice clinic and stuff. And I think the important thing is the framework. And so, because what I believe when you have one of these experiences, particularly to try and heal from something, it doesn't begin and end with the drug experience. The drug experience is a mechanism by which you start processing and moving through this. But then you need other things. You need like sort of aftercare. You need sort of some kind of therapeutic model. Yeah, exactly. Some kind of integration way of it. So having a framework, whether it's clinical, I don't think it particularly matters what the substance is. People have, I've had amazing, healing experiences from things like LSD, through to things like, if you go the full traditional route, things like ayahuasca. So I do not believe at all that this thing of you must go to the jungle and you must do it this way. I think that as long as you are going through a model or going through a process, you can heal from that. So in that regard, I think Pharmahuasca would be as good as ayahuasca.
Yeah, Pharmahuasca sprang to mind when you were speaking with Antoni, the previous caller, because for me that would be a way to ask DMT more stuff and gain more answers compared to vape DMT, which is, as we said before, just a very quick roller coaster, and there's not a lot you can interact with.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, my experiences with Pharmahuasca were mind blowing. I also recognise that by having them sort of just I had them here in at home, then they didn't have the same kind of structure to them. So I was really kind of like just like the experience was kind of happening to me rather than sort of being guided through some kind of process. But in terms of like the potency of the experience, it's extreme, but it's as potent as you want it to be, because that's one of the cool things about Pharmahuasca.
You can take more DMT effectively.
Yeah, not only can you take more DMT, you can dial it in very specifically to what you want. So you can find out where your kind of baseline is, and then sort of very precisely go up 10 milligrams more, 20 milligrams more, 50 milligrams more. You know exactly where you are. Whereas with something like ayahuasca, then you get a cup of ayahuasca, and whatever's in that cup
is always a gamble.
It's whatever you get. Now that also has a benefit, because it's when you go into one of these things where you have got problems and you're reserved, then it's typical to when you get to those moments to like, I don't know, and the kind of message is just drink the cup, and you don't know whether this is the strongest cup of ayahuasca in the world or the weakest cup of ayahuasca in the world. You just you get it, but sometimes you need to have your ass kicked, because that's how you kind of break apart these emotional firewalls that you've built up. And some of the experiences that I've had on ayahuasca, if I'd have known about them beforehand, if I probably wouldn't have kind of like agree. I would have bottled it. I would have said like, oh no, that's too much for tonight. But you kind of
I know. I've had that night.
Yeah, like, exactly.
In Arcana, the first time that you go, they give you sort of a relatively moderate dose, so they can gauge each one's sensitivity. And the first night I was just bored because nothing happened. I was just sitting there and literally nothing. And so the second time I was very arrogant and I asked for the big boy cup, and oh boy.
Yeah, I had that. My very first time out at Arcana, I had the same kind of experience. The first night, not much happened at all. Second night, I felt
you redosed, I assume, in the middle of the ceremony.
Well, I didn't, because at that point I was I just couldn't stomach it. I was really excuse me. Yeah, I'm always fine getting the first cup down, but after that first cup, I hate taking second cups. So on my
Understandable.
third night at Arcana, I just thought, right, I'm all in. And so when they said how much you want, I said I want 2 cups. So straight away off the bat, I had 2 cups, and it was 2 of the big cups. It was probably like half a pint of ayahuasca, and I just nicked it out. And yeah, to say I got my ass kicked would be like an absurd understatement. But it was one of the greatest experiences of my life. It was, it would be almost impossible to describe. And I'm grateful. I'm kind of grateful that I was so arrogant and so cocky, because like if I'd have known beforehand, like I said, I would have never done it, never. And having had, like I say, sometimes having that kind of neuroticism taken out of your hand and just like, okay, here's a cup, drink the cup, rather than sort of sitting there thinking, I think I need 10 milligrams more. You know, it's like, you can tie yourself in knots, getting very absorbed into like into the fine details. Whereas I think sometimes it's just like, I think there's a benefit saying, fuck it, let's just
eat this, drink this, and see what happens.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the cool things about having a facilitator model, whether it's shamanic or whatever, is that often you will have someone saying, actually, I think you should push yourself a bit further here. I think you should, and because they can see that you might be, resisting, or that you might be, sort of, you might be too nervous, and they'll sort of coach you through it. And it's not, people, it's not the same as someone like forcing stuff. They say, drink this, drink it, but it's someone saying, I think you should go a bit further here. I think you should be brave, and you came here for an experience, but maybe you want to have that experience before you go home. So I think this is the good thing about having someone to coach you through it, where you can just outsource basically your you basically your well-being, your care. You go to one of these things, you tell them what it is you're looking to achieve, and then they will sort of advise you on how to get that thing that you asked for. Because a lot of the times, if you leave it to yourself, you'll be like, not tonight. It's so you can.
So it's interesting. You said before, about the framework and not, taking a knife and hacking at yourself, which is in my, earliest days of psychedelic exploration. In my naivety, it was exactly what I did. Thank God it worked very good for me. In short, I was doing heroic doses of mushrooms every 2 to 3 weeks, because sometimes, as you said, I was standing there with the mushrooms in my head. I was like, not tonight. Because, mushrooms are not necessarily fun. But as I kept, I had my own framework. My nickname here is Secular Shaman. So, nothing wooey, nothing, when I say ceremony, I mean just a personal space with, music and some candles and stuff like that. And I just embarked into personal journeys. And one night that I ate a significant amount of albino penis envy. I don't know if you never tried them, but they're pretty strong mushrooms.
Yep.
Yeah. I had my first encounter with the experience that I later read about that we call ego death. But, having no concept around it, having never even read it before, it honestly felt like death. Like, this is the moment. I'm dying. Like, everybody will go through this. There is no exceptions. For me, the time is now. Like, the fact that psilocybin is safe and cannot kill me, which was my anchor always, even that was gone, and I was, fully into it. Anyway, I went with it, kicking and screaming a little bit, and it was, pretty much a rebirth. Like, after that, 12 plus years of depression, just, there was a crack in them. I won't say it was healed, but suddenly there was the juxtaposition of, this is the, cynical and depressed way of looking at the world, and here is a more healthy way of looking at the world, which you can choose to pick up and, strengthen, like a muscle that has atrophied over the years.
Yeah, I think let me just unpack a little bit around some of what I said before, because I think what you've just described, I think is, I wouldn't sort of want to try and get like pissy and say, okay, you clearly when you had that kind of experience and you got some sort of value from it, and I would completely agree, and I think I would kind of like try and slice up that is that. There is a immense value in having an experience like what you just described, like this kind of like getting your ass kicked, even having an ego death. And clearly this is something you can do at home. You can have, you know, a substance go through that kind of ego death experience, and it can be transformative. It can, you know, completely open your eyes and change your perspective on the world. And I think there's immense value in that. But I do think that that's a difference between that and intentionally going through a kind of a healing process. Now, when I talk about like healing processes, this is where you're really going into the kind of like the deep roots of yourself, with a very strong intention, and usually over a sort of a period of time. And so like things like ego deaths are like, you know, these are kind of like events that happen to you, and I would call it, you know, this is like a transformative experience. I don't necessarily think that, you know, ego deaths they're not always
no, and obviously each experience was building onto the previous experience. That was a span of a year, so I had multiple, you know, personal ceremonies. But yeah, I, in retrospect, you know, even though it worked for me, and there might be some people or some type of people that it might work for, I always advocate for, as you said, a structure and sitters and guides and everything around this, because yeah, as
well, it sounds like you had that structure.
It can go wrong, as it can go right, it can also go wrong.
Yeah, but I mean, it does sound like you had that structure. So I mean, even kind of you were building your own structure, and you know, yes. I do think that there is, you know, if there is expertise available to you, then you know, use that expertise just as you would with any other kind of, you know, whether it's your plumbing or your, you know, building or whatever like that. You rely on that expertise, but you know, clearly there are people who figure these things out for themselves. So again, I'm always very, I don't draw like a kind of a hard line of saying like nobody can ever do, like you have to do this. Like, again, this is just my opinion on it. People build their own houses. I can't build my own house. You know, people wire up their own electricity. I can't do that. You know, Carl Jung figured out psychoanalysis all on his own. You know, I could do that. So there's always people who are capable of doing these things. But then there's the kind of like the general rule for most people. And I think even when you're doing those things, you know, it's always good to, even if you're confident with something, to bring in expertise. Like when I go on these like retreats and stuff like that, it's a lot of it's not because I'm not confident taking psychedelics, because I'm interested in sort of, you know, learning and hearing different perspectives and you know, getting new tools which I can then incorporate into my own toolbox, which I will then use at home. And when you sort of talk about, you know, like your ceremonies, yeah, a lot of the ceremonial stuff I do is stuff I've picked up from all these different places. So I think what you're describing, I think, is a perfectly healthy, you know, perfectly, you know, good way of going about these things. And if you've got your sort of structure and your setting intentions, then go for it. I think that's a kind of you know, that's as valid a framework.
Yeah, the only caveat I'd be here is always to err on the side of caution. And, you know, whenever somebody has never tried psychedelics before, he and I cannot know whether they are the kind of person that can build their own house. They can wire their own electrics, to use your own analogy. Mm-hmm. So for the first times, I always, you know, advise there is a sitter or a group of people around, and you know, if after 2 or 3 times tripping you feel that, you know, you can set up your own ceremony and your own space and be your own sitter, yeah, by all means.
Yeah. If I could just expand on that a little bit. Excuse me. Yeah, I think just in regards to setting up your own ceremony and your own space, I would say absolutely go for it. And for sure, this is what I do. I think there's also some caution to be had there around thinking that you can do that for other people. That's a whole different ballgame. So this is where you get sort of people who have their own experiences and then sort of become convinced that, oh, okay, well, I can now replicate this on other people and I can take on their burdens and I can cure them. I think that's a, you know, something to be very cautious with. And what was the other thing I was going to say? Don't know. It's escaped me.
It's fine. I'll just poke one more topic and then I'll let somebody else talk.
Sure.
Given that it's December and the Yuletide and everything, have you ever experimented with Amanita?
I have, yeah. I had a bunch of videos around my explorations with Amanita, and unfortunately, YouTube has a very negative opinion of Amanita muscaria. It views it as a toxic mushroom. And so basically there was a purging of content regarding Amanita muscaria. Now I got a basically all my videos around Amanita muscaria got pulled from YouTube, and I got a warning from it. And so yeah, this really impacted some channels. As one of my friends is a lady called Amanita Dreamer. She has an entire channel based around Amanita, and she got completely fucked by this. All pretty much because all of her content was about Amanita muscaria. She got completely screwed, and it's really impacted her YouTube channel. I was kind of looking. I only had a few videos on it, but yeah, I think it. When was it? Was it the beginning of this year or was it last? I can't remember. But yeah, I had basically a couple of experiences with Amanita muscaria, and it's. I mean, have you done it yourself?
I'm actually on the tail ends of a very light experience because I was dipping my toes into it today. So, not really, but a little bit. Yeah,
it's interesting. I think if you approach it thinking it's going to be anything like psilocybin, it's not like that at all. I think it's. I really enjoyed the experience with Amanita. I think it's very. It's got a very sort of unique characteristic. Personally, for me, it wasn't as sort of transformative as say the tryptamines like psilocybin or DMT. It's not kind of like it's not as kind of visual. Sort of it takes you away to a different place. But it's I mean I would certainly recommend sort of people try it. I think it's definitely overly demonized. Like the having learned about it to partake in that experience, I kind of realized that a lot of what I thought I knew about this mushroom is bullshit in terms of how deadly it is and all that kind of stuff. And that's certainly the kind of the narrative that YouTube's got. Because it views like eating Amanita in the same way as like eating laundry pods. It's like, this is dangerous, don't fucking do it. If you make content about this, we'll pull it. So unfortunately I can't really talk much more about my experience with Amanita, but if there are a couple of videos that are still up, if you go on my channel and look through some of the long form conversations, there's ones there with Amanita Dreamer. And
I think I've seen it, but I don't remember if you personally have tried it.
So I've done it a couple of times, and I would probably do it again at some point. But I would say it's not where my heart is. I'll put it that way. My heart's more with the kind of the tryptamine based substances.
Yeah, I mean probably same, but I'm definitely very eager to explore this mushroom because it's very iconic, and I've had my eye on it since I was a kid.
Yeah, exactly. And I think particularly if from Europe, it's very baked into the culture here, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to try it, is because I felt like I was doing all these things like going to Peru and sampling that culture, sampling like drinking cactuses and doing ayahuasca. But then it kind of occurred to me like, hold on, there is a culture here that's like on my doorstep that I'm completely ignoring, and I wanted to try and connect with my own like European heritage, and so that's what kind of brought me to Amanita, and I'm glad for that experience, and I'm going to continue to explore it. But yeah, I think it's one of the things I was kind of aware I was like fetishizing a bit other cultures, but I think that was one of the what I'd like to find more of here in Europe is like, are there communities which are really where it's kind of like really baked into this Amanita muscaria in the same way that ayahuasca is baked into these shamanic communities in Peru. I would love to find, if there's anybody out there who knows, please point me in the right direction. If there's any like European communities really integrated with this mushroom and really sort of doing sort of ceremonies with it in a sort of because I feel like it's part of my heritage. Here in Switzerland at this time of year, Amanita muscaria is all over the place. People are putting little, they've got Amanita muscaria Christmas tree decorations and fireplace decorations. It's on the posters. People are advertising with Amanita muscaria, so it's there in the culture consciousness. But not
Christmas decoration was my first memory of that mushroom. I remember putting it on the family Christmas tree, and I was wondering, why do we put a mushroom on this tree?
Exactly, yeah. It's everywhere, and in Europe, but it's like I'm kind of wondering, like, do people know what this mushroom does, or is this like another kind of Christmas tree to them? Is it just something that is associated with the season, or is there some like underground culture where people are really celebrating this mushroom and like ingesting it? So I'm hoping to find something like that in Europe, and if I do, I'll probably talk about it some more.
I'd be interested in that. Okay, I see people with hands raised, so I'll be good with my time. And I'll speak to you next time.
It's a pleasure talking to you, mate. And if it does, I'll speak to you in the new year if you call in next time. And so have yourself a very happy Amanita Christmas.
Likewise.
Cheers, dude.
Same to everyone here.
Okay, let's move on to Moby Grape. Moby, you should have a button to accept.
Yeah, hi Rob, can you hear me?
I can, mate. How are you doing?
Good, and you?
Yeah, feature me.
Yeah, I've been sort of following you for some time. I just want to say thanks for the content. It's great. It took me a while to figure out the Discord thing. I was on there for a while and just, I don't know, maybe I'm a little older. So
yeah, me too, mate. To be honest, the whole Discord thing is, my kids had to sort of coach me on how to use Discord, and I think it was one of the first things where I thought I was really tech savvy. And I was like, "Oh my god, it's happened. The generation gap has happened, and I'm now like." So yeah, don't worry. It took me a while to figure it out.
Right, I'm not tech savvy at all, but anyway. So what I wanted to ask you about, because I know you've mentioned it in a couple of videos and that, talking about that you suffered from back pains, and I do too. And basically what I've kind of come to in sort of sessions and so on is that this is some sort of a psychosomatic thing, and I just kind of want to know what your thoughts on that are. And I mean, I can get a little into what's going on with me, just to kind of flesh it out a bit. But
I mean, it's up to you, mate. If you want to flesh it out, but I'm happy to talk about my experience.
Yeah, I mean, because I generally haven't had many sort of psychedelic experiences. I mean, I had much more in my younger days, and they weren't like, really large doses or anything. But the last two I had were, through retreat centers. One was like 6 years ago in Ecuador, and that was a combination ayahuasca and San Pedro. And then the other one was 2 years ago in Jamaica at a mushroom retreat.
Right, yeah.
But generally how I kind of work with the stuff, well, at least the stuff that I'm going through is mostly with cannabis now and meditation, just because it's really kind of hard, at least, to try source stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't live where I was born. I live now in the US. I'm in the Midwest. And, just people, I don't know anyone who does things like this. But anyway, so mostly with the cannabis is when it started all to come out, like what was going on with this. And the back pains I have is in my shoulder and in my hip area, and this is all on the right side of my body. It doesn't affect the left. And, I've gone to physical therapy and I've done all this type of stuff, but it doesn't seem to be shifting. Well, it is now that I've sort of been working through this stuff. And what I kind of came to the conclusion in one of my cannabis sessions, and, relating to that, I could also see in my previous trips how this is kind of, it's been coming out, if that makes sense.
Yep.
But this is all related to like within Jungian psychology, this sort of masculine and the feminine.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, this is based, it seems to be on the feminine side, and this relates a lot to my relation with my parents and a lot of it's my mother essentially that's playing out in this side. It's like I suppose what would you call it? Like the feminine archetype, what is it called when you build all around the feminine? I can't think of the word now.
Is it the animus? Is it kind of?
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. But like how I've built up what the feminine means, right, is based on my experience of that through my mother. And my mother suffers. This is the other interesting thing. She has an autoimmune disease, so she's got rheumatoid arthritis, and it's almost like I'm suffering that on my right side. Like this is what's kind of. I don't have rheumatoid arthritis. It's all just muscular. Where it's all just clenching. It doesn't want to release. But this is kind of what came up in this. And I do see a therapist. She's a Jungian psychotherapist. And she's really like, yeah, this is kind of what's going on here. That, you know, there's clearly something there with this feminine side that you're needing to sort of, I mean, obviously the ideal is to kind of balance the two, you know, the masculine and the feminine. And clearly what I'm having here is the feminine seems to be really reluctant. At least this is what I'm getting from these experiences. It doesn't want to balance and merge. So that's basically, you know, without getting into it too much, what's going on. And I just wonder what your thoughts on this is.
Yeah, I mean, firstly, I'd say I can so relate because, if you've heard me sort of talking about videos, a lot of my problems with centered around basically the trauma from my all my abandonment issues with my mother. And so just to in regards to the pain topic, I think there's two aspects to it. So firstly is that I have had physical injuries. This is mostly as a result of my epilepsy, where I've done physical damage. So I've kind of like my right shoulder is kind of physically damaged, and the back pains that I have is caused when I broke my back in several places through having seizures. Now, the interesting bit, which ties into what you're saying, is that whenever I'm going through a phase of turmoil, whether emotional turmoil, I will be these pains will become much more prominent. In fact, they'll become prominent to the point of distracting, and where I will start catastrophizing over them. Like my life will become dominated by, oh my God, how am I going to live like this? My pain. Whereas then when I move into a phase of kind of resolution, or when I'm feeling sort of more content, then I can forget about them. Now, I think that the kind of thing here is that your pain doesn't necessarily like go away. If right now I'm feeling pretty healthy, and I think this is as a result of the retreat that I was on back in August, September. So I'm feeling physically, I feel good now. If I stop and think about it, I can start identifying where the pain is in my shoulder, but I'm not catastrophizing it. It's not, it's not overpowering me. So the way I came to understand this is that through, and this is a big part of the kind of the work I did with ayahuasca. I have got these injuries, or I'm getting older and stuff like that. Things are going wrong. What I learned to do was to rework my relationship with pain, with myself. That I had to understand. Okay, well, this is how it is, and sort of work out what the new kind of baseline for myself is. It's like, okay, well, if I don't do anything to antagonize my shoulder, then this is how it feels. So this is my new kind of baseline. This is the relationship I've got to have now with myself. Right. And then and from that you can. Again, it's not a case of making the pain go away. It's kind of like it's not even a case of ignoring it. It's kind of acknowledging that it's there. But okay, well that's how it is. It's fine, and you kind of like you are as you're going to get older and you're going to start, things are going to start breaking down. If as you do that, as you become, say, 60 years old or whatever, you start thinking, oh my God, I'm not as young as I used to be, my life's fucked. That's not the way to live. It's just like it's not the way to live for me to sit thinking, oh my God, my shoulder's fucked. It's like, okay, you've got to work with how it is. And what I found is that by accepting that, then it just stopped being an issue. And so I'm not fighting with it anymore. And it's the same with my back. I know, and again, just to be clear, this is not like a miracle cure or anything. So when I have times of stress at work, or say if me and Rachel are having an argument or whatever like that, then I'll start noticing these things again. I'll start, oh my God, my knees hurt. Oh my God, my back hurts. All these things will build up, and these things can stack up, so that and I notice that they begin to become more prominent, in particular when I'm going to go into some kind of attempt to heal something. So usually before an ayahuasca retreat, my shoulder will start hurting, my knees will start hurting, my back will start hurting. Every possible distraction to take me away from focusing on the thing which I know I need to focus on will just start appearing. And it's bonkers. It's like, why am I doing this to myself? Like, at this time when I'm trying to resolve it, why is it all coming to the front? And I think it's because, going into one of these kind of healing therapeutic things, no matter what sort of modality it is, whether it's psychotherapy or whatever, things always get worse before they get better, and your body's kind of scared at your body will always try and lock into, like, no, just stay how it is, just stay within your comfort zone, stay how it is. And it's kind of like, it's almost like it's firing a few warning shots to make you think, actually, I'm not ready for this now. So, but I think if you go at it, and I think, which is to get to the point you're asking, like, yes, I think that a lot of these things, I think psychosomatic is not the right word for it, but the psychological and the physical, I think, is inherently tied together, and you can, or at least I did, drastically rewire the way your brain works and your relationship to pain, to the point where I shit, I thought my life was fucked. I thought my life was completely fucked. I thought I was constantly projecting into the future and imagining what this pain was going to feel like tomorrow. What's it going to feel like in 5 years? Like, I was making lists in my head of activities that I could no longer do. Like, oh no, I can't do that. Shoulder, can't, like, this is when my son was much younger, and he's wanting me to go rock climbing with him and climbing trees with him and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, I'm frail. And that mindset was toxic, because it makes you feel you kind of begin to believe that identity of yourself as this broken thing. So if I think by going through, like, kind of therapy or with psychedelics, to be able to snap that that perception of that identity you have about yourself is, first of all, it's very doable, it's very powerful. And you can realize that, you are not your pain, and you can have a different relationship with it. Just like, and I would say that you need to, because people have, injuries. Just go and look at, like, people who come back from, I've been on retreats with veterans who've had horrific injuries, and part of it was seeing people like that, and seeing how they sort of, reworked their model of themselves into, like, okay, I don't have a leg anymore, and and it's like, and if they can do it, then sort of, I thought, well, fucking I can do it. Right. So I think it's worth exploring. I think you can. So go ahead.
So with a lot of this, obviously there's the psychological aspect. I was doing physical therapy for a while, month or 2 months, and it was kind of like they were giving you exercises in case they're working on you, but it just wasn't giving. It was like, and it's like what you were saying, it's in times of stress or of shits coming up, that's when it gets so much fucking worse. And it's almost like it's like a precursor to sort of releasing. of emotional stuff, which I've often found. And it's kind of almost like, oh yeah, it's time to kind of, do a good meditation session here, or like what I generally do is cannabis related, just because I have access to that. And I think a lot of people kind of underestimate how powerful cannabis can be. It certainly is, in my books, a psychedelic for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I've been able to process a lot of this stuff, and like I say, it keeps coming back to this sort of like this feminine aspect, that I somehow have this distorted view of what that. I mean, it could be anything, right? I mean, whatever the feminine is, it can be everything from the positive, nurturing mother to the sort of like
to the witch.
Yeah, right. I mean, not my mum's really great, but there are aspects, and a lot of this stuff is I don't even know if it's necessarily. I mean, this stuff goes back further, right? Because it's got to do with her own childhood, and then her parents, and I mean, there's clearly stuff that I'm dealing with that's not even mine. That's kind of the feeling I get from it. But yeah, so there's a combination of doing that, but there's also I do yoga. I mean, basically, I have to do yoga just to keep this at bay, when it starts playing up. And that also is a therapeutic tool that helps bring things up, and you can, work through it. I mean, I've had many a time in yoga, certain poses brings up a deep emotional sort of responses, which I was kind of freaked out at first when that happened. But when I started looking into it, it's quite common.
Yeah.
So that was kind of an interesting, and then with my therapist and that, because, she's talking about, well, there's also the masculine, you shouldn't just neglect that. So funny enough, you're talking about rock climbing. I've actually taken that up. So I've been rock climbing for 3 or so months now, and it's greatly improved the sort of mobility and even the strength of my upper body in that. So that's helped a bit. So it's definitely a combination of the psychological as well as the physical. I think it's an all-round package.
Yeah, and
if you will.
And I think with these things, when you're dealing with something like that, where you've got a combination of physical and psychological symptoms, and I again totally relate to what you're saying, where you're going through the physical part of it, so you're going through something like physical therapy or something like that, and it's like overwhelming. It's like I can't move like this. It hurts. It's too much, and I think this is where, again, you can sort of look to, substances, to plants and stuff like that for help. I mean, the one I've talked about quite a bit on my channel is Cambo, as this kind of this frog venom thing where you take it. Yeah. It looks horrible. You go through the thing, you throw your guts up, but it gives you this kind of very potent painkiller effect. It's quite amazing. It just, for me, it just turns pain off like for a good couple of weeks. And so I think using, when you're healing from these things, don't be afraid to sort of throw the net quite wide. And I think, deal with the physical aspects, and there is deal with the physical rehabilitation, which it sounds like, you are doing.
Yeah.
But also don't be afraid to have help with that sort of rehabilitation. Like I said, there are sort of substances and plants that do it. Again, this is where you have to be careful not to become over-reliant on that help, which is where you get people fall into things like opiate addiction and things like that.
Right. I mean, I am kind of a little concerned about, because in my early 20s, I was one of those who relied on pot every day for a good couple of years, and it wasn't healthy at all. I mean, I do kind of look at that in many ways. It kind of pulled me down into this sort of anxious, sort of depressive sort of section of my life. But I do also recognize that was just opening the gates, kind of bringing all this shit up to the surface so that I could work with it. I mean, clearly at the time I didn't understand that. Not until I, started experimenting a bit more with psychedelics and reading into it and realizing what was happening. But that is a fear even now. I don't want to be doing this where this is now a habitual thing.
Yeah. And it's interesting, just to come back to what you were saying earlier around the kind of the kind of the archetypal models. I mean, that was a part of my big motivation around kind of where psychedelics stopped being recreational and where I started really trying to sort of do the work here, is that I recognized, I'm going to pass on this kind of some of this craziness to my kids, and I wanted to get myself in order to try and sort of break this cycle and also just to build up, you know, like the images that you were talking before around, like, you know, sort of your mother as or a woman, you could say, the female as in these different roles of, you know, the maiden, the sort of, you know, the hag, the witch, the queen, the sort of all these kind of archetypes. And yeah, I kind of realized that I was lacking all of that. I didn't have a mother. I needed to build a relationship to something that I'd never had a guide for. And it's fascinating going down these kind of routes into these archetypes. It's fascinating, even because then you can start realizing the things about yourself as, you know, as yourself as the, you know, the boy who became the man, who became the parent who's growing old, you know, as you know, as the sort of, you know, the mentor to the, you know, all these different sort of roles within yourself. And I think by becoming aware of them, you can then sort of work out where you sit in regards to these things, and sort of which areas that you need to explore. So yeah, man, it's I think it sounds like you're doing great work, and I would, you know,
still plenty to do though.
I mean, isn't there always?
Well, I mean, this is the thing. Talking with my therapist, you know, she, like I said, she works with the Jungian, and that's what I sought out. Because I mean, in all my psychedelic experiences, the Jungian model, I mean, to me, it fits.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
And she's kind of like, hey, listen, you're not just doing this to get to a point and then you're good. This is going to be continual work right through your life. Mm-hmm. I was like, well, you know, I suppose it's a practice, right? And just, yeah, do it.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the kind of reasons why I think there's a bit of a skewed idea. That's why I don't really kind of like the whole kind of enlightenment model.
Right.
Like this idea that you can have some experience and then you're like, I'm done. That's it. You know, I'm just going to put my feet up and that's me for the rest of my. I see.
Christ, it would be great if it was like that.
Well, I don't know, because I think there is something to the journey, and I think when I look back upon my own experiences, then yeah, for sure you don't want every day to be some kind of like introspective nightmare, but by having those experiences, the challenging experiences, the struggles which you overcome, that is where you will then find the sort of the happier experiences. And I think, you know, I've come to realize that like our life is this ongoing journey. I don't think I ever want to get to a sort of a stage where it's like, okay, yeah, my feet are up on the deck chair, I'm, you know, la 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 la. And I think it's kind of, I think it's kind of, it's wrong to, or it's a mistake to try and permanently position yourself within the kind of like the happy place, as though that's like the only place. We are human beings, and we have this broad spectrum of possible emotional states, and they're not wrong. Like, it's not wrong to sort of, you know, when your loved ones die, it's not wrong to feel grief. That's not a pathology. When you've been injured and you feel hurt, that's not wrong. That's a perfectly natural reaction, and you should express, you should have that reaction and express it. You should embody it. If you just permanently, like, oh no, I'm in pain, give me the painkillers, I want the happy place, then that's the kind of mistake. Really, you've got to, and also just to be clear, I firmly would say that there are times in your life when things are going on which are just too much. Sometimes you need that bit of help. Pharmaceutical. I've got no problem with pharmaceuticals at all. Like, if you're in excruciating pain, give me the fucking painkillers. So
for sure.
Yeah. So, but it should always be with a kind of a view to, like, how can I get myself back on track? How can I get myself back to baseline?
We're talking about this sort of, people trying to get rid of that negative. I mean, I definitely had that after my first ayahuasca retreat, and I went there because I was suffering, pretty bad anxiety, and I had depression at the time, pretty bad depression. And when I went in there, it was like, I had two ayahuasca sessions. The first night, it made me shit my pants. But I came out of that because the second session I just took a small amount. I didn't really have much of an experience, but after I got out of or came back home, the depression was gone. But what was interesting about it is that, you know, over time, of course, there's going to be times when you're sad, and I had those experiences thinking, "Oh my God, the depression's back."
Yeah.
And then it would dissipate in 1 or 2 days, or, you know, in a day, or whatever it was. It wasn't going on for weeks and weeks, and, you know, like I had previously, and I wasn't having the sort of suicidal ideation and all that type of shit going on. That had disappeared. And it took me a while, and I think this is something that people need to, you know, who go on these retreats to kind of realize that
Couldn't agree more, mate.
When you get back, you know, it's the integration part of that. It takes time to deal with how you are now after those experiences, you know, and that these negative things are going to happen. They're not going to just go away.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing with integration, and this is why I kind of like bang the drum around it a bit, because you're not integrating. The purpose is not to integrate the happy experience. The purpose is to become like an integrated human being. So, you know, when I cannot like. It's not to sweep under the carpet the fact that my mother died and I had a fucking horrible, you know, childhood. You know, that happened. It's what I've got to do is like learn to live with that, to learn to sort of cope with that, learn to sort of, you know, heal around that. It's not about ignoring things or sweeping them under the carpet. You've got to, you know, it's about having a realistic view of your life and being able to move forward with it. And I've seen it happen exactly what you just described, in that so people have gone and had, like, say, an ayahuasca experience. It's been mind-blowing. They've been in the happy place. They came out of it. They thought, that's it. I'm done. I'm cured. And then when they started coming out of that happy place, which is, you know, inevitable. You will come down, the afterglow will fade. But then it's like, how well you are integrated is not like necessarily how, I don't know what sort of people think around this thing, but it's about like, how you sort of can then, I would say the true mark of integration is being able then to look at the pain and look at this sort of thing, but then sort of, it keeps saying the word integration, but integrate it into yourself, but not let it have the same kind of power over you. And I've seen people have that where it's like, oh my God, I'm not happy anymore. It's failed. Ayahuasca has failed.
Right. I mean, I went through that this didn't work. And the thing is, I have empathy for people who go through that, because it's just there's a lot of buzzwords, right? I mean, it's one of them. Integration. And I remember being at this retreat, and they're going, when you get back, you need to do the integration. And then, you know, they'd throw out a few things like, you should meditate. And I'm like, I almost needed like a manual of how to do it. And the thing is, there is no manual. That's the thing I wish they'd kind of told me, that you just got to, I mean, you can definitely have support, but there is a lot of fumbling through it until you kind of figure out the thing that works for you. And
I know what you mean, around it's a buzzword. It's definitely a buzzword. Yeah. I've tried to explain it, but it's also a very tricky one to explain. I think you and I, we're talking as people who've been through this, so we've got an understanding of it. Right. But the other thing that I've noticed as well, which is very counterproductive, is that people get very pissy about it, in that they assume that because you've done the medicine, because you're on the retreat, that, well, of course I'm integrating it, you know, or I've meditated, of course I'm integrating it. And it's not that. And people get very defensive when you suggest them, like, actually, you probably didn't integrate that experience. Like, no, I did. I definitely did. And it's so... it would be awesome to have a manual and a guidebook to it, but it's so personal depending on what it is that you're dealing with. But I'd say that the kind of like just as a sort of generalization, kind of rule, it's the ability for you to be able to look at what the problem was in the first place, and sort of detach that emotional complex from it, so that it's not having the same power over you. And it's not, again, it's not to say that you're forgetting it, or that it's like you're la la la. It's kind of it's owning your shit, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, can I get one more question? Because there are other people who want it. But So I'm kind of looking at being able to get mushrooms at some point. Yeah, I mean, I'm probably just going to try and grow them. That would probably be the easiest.
Yeah.
But in sort of exploring that, because it's basically, I don't really have. I mean, I've got my wife, but she's not a guide, obviously, and she's not really into these things. And I don't really know if I want to, like, put that on her, like, oh, she can sit there and watch me while I'm, going through it. But and also, I mean, I'd say a deep respect, but it's also a fear of these spaces. Because every time I get in there, you just go like, oh god, there's that sort of sometimes like, fucking hell. I mean, the thing is, most of my experience has not been what I would classify as massively terrifying. I mean, apart from, I suppose the ayahuasca. I mean, the part about the ayahuasca that was really fucking freaky is I felt like I was being pulled into this other dimension that felt like almost sort of like a what would you call it? Like a computer sort of. That's not. I don't know. But I was being pulled into this, and while this was happening, I just felt this up my left arm, this tingling, and I was like, "Oh, that's kind of interesting." And then I suddenly fucking realized I had a giant snake in my arm, crawling up into my body, kind of curling around inside, and I could feel its head turning, and it was positioning itself up towards my head, and it started to like move, and I went, "Fucking no ways!" Opened my eyes, and it all just stopped. But from that, there's like, best way to describe it is like doom descended on the Maloka. But it was just like the atmosphere was like doom, and it was this. Nothing bad was going on, but I was like, oh fuck! If I don't work through whatever I've got going on here, it's going to get horrendous. And then I spent the next what seemed like an eternity just these mantras coming up, and I was just like, all this sort of like, I am not a depressed person, I am not, whatever it was, kind of going through this. And as I'd get to a certain like peak where it was kind of feeling like it was a climax, I was able to then throw it across, out of the Maloka, and there was all this yawning going on and like releasing of whatever this was. So that's about as terrifying as I've ever gone, or at least a trip has been for me. But that was enough for me to be like, I'm really hesitant.
Yeah,
to get back into that.
It gave you a healthy respect for it.
Yeah, and I mean, I've heard other people's descriptions, and I go, like, Jesus, I don't know if I'd be able to deal with that.
I think you mentioned something around you, kind of your wife as a sitter, and I think just one thing I just kind of want to mention there is that I think that's like a double-edged sword, and certainly I've been through this with
right,
Rachel.
And that's what I'm concerned about too.
Yeah, it's one. It can be. Yeah, it's very kind of subjective. On sometimes it's the most reassuring thing possible to have your most loved one there to sort of to anchor you. But on the other hand, it can also be, particularly if you're doing this kind of like deep work, it's for a partner to see their loved one go through incredible distress. It can also be upsetting for them, and you end up with this kind of feedback loop. And I've certainly had this with Rachel. One time I was going through a nightmare experience, but I needed to go through it. It was that was my process, and she was getting upset by watching me going through, being extremely upset, and so she was trying to comfort me through it, but that's not what I needed at that point. I didn't need to be comforted, and I didn't need the complexities of our relationship at that point. It was too much for me to have to deal with, like, because I wanted to comfort her, but at the same point, you end up in some very weird energetic sort of states. So yeah, I'll just say be mindful of that. And I think
and that's exactly what I'm concerned about. And I mean, my idea is to kind of start, because I mean, I've taken mushrooms a fair amount of times. It was always smaller sort of amounts. I'd say probably 1.5 and dried grams. I mean, the most I've ever done is 5, and that was at a retreat. But previous to that was probably about 1.5, 2.5 at most. So that I know I can handle, and I know that you can get therapeutic sort of benefits from that. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Would you think that's still worth doing? or should you just be going for the now got to do a heroic dose?
No, you do whatever you do, mate. And I've said many times that I think there's a value across all these experiences. Some of my most productive in terms of the work done were not necessarily the deepest, most visionary states that I've been in. So I would say some of my most productive ones, like nothing much was happening visually at all, but emotionally a lot was going on. So yeah, I mean, you do whatever works for you. Don't be. I'm not at all into the kind of fetishizing of like more, do all, boof everything, snort everything. It's like whatever kind of whatever works. Just to on the kind of topic of sort of navigating that thing with your wife. What me and Rachel did was that we came up with a kind of like a set of like code words, because it's tricky when you're going through something like that, and particularly you've got someone sat with you. What you want to do is basically just let them know where you're at, but you don't want to have to explain it to them. So you kind of, so what we did, we worked out sort of beforehand, like just a set of where we could just say, if she said like where you at, I could just say it's a code yellow. It's a code, where you at, code green. Okay, I'll leave you alone. Where you at, code yellow. Code yellow. Okay, code yellow means that I'm having a challenging time, but I'm still okay. Like where you at, like code red. This is really difficult. Code black. Call a fucking ambulance. And so that's what you need to like work out, how you can communicate without explaining yourself. Because trying to explain where you're at in a psychedelic experience to your loved one who you don't necessarily want to freak out or whatever is next to impossible. It's really fucking difficult. So just work out just some kind of language you establish beforehand where you can just say, I know I'm crying and I'm screaming, but I'm okay, but let me do it.
Right.
This is a code yellow. It's okay.
Right. So I think probably just start off in a smaller amounts and kind of work up until I get to a comfort level. And all right, cool.
Well,
thanks a lot, Rob.
Yeah, no,
pleasure. Appreciated.
Yeah, that's been a pleasure speaking to you, mate, and I wish you all the best with it. So.
Yeah. Right. Cheers.
All right. Bye. Okay, and I think I can do one more call. It's been quite a long one, this, but we've had some really good conversations. I just want to give a big shout out to the guests so far. It's been really great. And the final call of the night is Earthworth, sorry. Earthworth, thank you so much for being patient, mate. I appreciate I've gone on a bit longer with some of these guys, but it's a final one of the year. I want to make sure I had a good chat with everyone. But let's bring you up. So Earthworth, I'm going to have to get this right. Earthworth. You should be able to invite, and think there you are. Can you hear me, mate?
Yes. Can you hear me?
I can, loud and clear. How are you doing?
Excellent. How are you?
I'm really good, mate. Thank you.
Great. Yes. It's been such a great, live or conversation so far. I mean, so relatable. I mean, so many topics that I've touched on that I can totally relate to, from, the pain aspect that you're just touching on, having the gratitude for being kind of cocky with your dosing. You're talking about that. I definitely had an experience like that as well. It was my first 5-MeO ceremony. I kind of went in there, thinking like, oh, this is just going to be like another, maybe a more intense DMT experience.
Oh yeah.
And
that'll soon put you straight.
Oh yeah. So the other. Well, I won't touch on that, but like I won't get into that. One day I will tell you that story about my first ceremony, but because it is nuts. It is nuts for a first 5-MeO experience. The facilitator is asking about our experience with psychedelics and stuff like that. So, like, we're talking about the dose that we went away out of it, and so I told him, like, thinking I'm like, yeah, I need a big one. So I said, I smoke DMT a few times a week and stuff like that. And he's like, oh, okay, so you want the big boy dose.
You're a tough guy.
Tough guy, me, yeah. So he weighed out, I think it was 18 milligrams.
That's a lot.
Yeah, for my first time. And it honestly, like afterwards, I was like, I am so glad that I gave him the whole backstory and everything. And because I got the experience that I needed, and it changed my life forever.
Yeah, I mean that is, I think that's exactly it. Sometimes, especially when you do have that kind of cockiness, it's good to get that kind of humbling experience, something. But I mean, 18 mils of 5-MeO DMT is a lot, and I think this is one of the things where people get very confused about the relationship between an NDMT and 5-MeO DMT. Like they think it's a 1-for-1. Like, oh, if you did 50 milligrams of an NDMT, then you can do 50 milligrams of 5-MeO. I'm like, holy no.
No. Having been facilitating the medicine now for a while, I would never give anyone that much right off the bat.
No, of course not. No.
So, yeah, that was a lesson, for sure.
They're there to be learned. All these experiences are there to teach us, mate.
Yeah.
So when you say you facilitate, is it 5-MeO that you facilitate?
Yes, that's what I've been doing for the past few years. And before that, I was for a few years before that, I was facilitating what I used to call extended state DMT, which is what you were touching on earlier, which is the combination of the harmalas with the vaporized DMT. I use a dab rig, but it's still the same, same sort of. Yeah,
I think that's the cool thing about when you do those kind of MAOIs. It really takes it gives you a lot more flexibility in the sort of the technique, because when you're trying to do it like normally, we're just like when I first get into DMT doing it with the glass pipe, there's so much faff around being able to get this amount of stuff into you within this short space of time, and when you've got the MAOI, that completely goes away. You can just sort of do it at your leisure. So it's a lot easier sort of route of administration.
Indeed. And the other one that I guess it's the same thing, but it's just a different ROI. It's like I will vaporize the freebase harmalas and then do the DMT after that. And that sometimes I've had an hour and a half experience.
Wow.
It's like so I'll have like 45 minutes of an intense DMT experience, and then 45 minutes of just like this utter euphoria, like as if I just popped like a Molly and a MDA or something like that. Like you literally felt like you were rolling for like the next 45 minutes after the intense part of the DMT experience is over.
Can I just ask you, what's your kind of experience of just the harmless element? Because the reason I asked, what I noticed last night when I did the harmless and then the NDMT, after the sort of the visionary part of the DMT came down, and I thought I was kind of like down from it, and so this was probably like a 30-minute visionary experience, and then I thought I was kind of out of it, and then I suddenly started having like a lot of very energetic stuff going on, like a lot of like stuff, like movements and sort of just very sort of physical stuff, and I kind of recognize this from my ayahuasca experiences, as this is like the physical component of ayahuasca. But what was kind of interesting with going this vape route is that with ayahuasca, the kind of like the DMT and the the harmless are kind of like, it's like married together and gives you this holistic experience. This was like I'd come out of the visionary state, and then I was now going into this kind of energetic state. And I wasn't expecting that at all. I wasn't expecting the harmless to have as much of a powerful effect as what it did. Have you got any any comments on that? Any experience of that?
Oh, I had that happen many times. And also observed it while holding space and facilitating and stuff like that. Absolutely, absolutely. There's something brilliant about that. The triggering, or maybe you would call it like a catalyst effect. To bring in this ability to move energy, stagnant energy in our body. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly how I sort of how it felt to me. Because I'd taken the harmless. I was like, it was like an hour and a half into just like the harmless part of it, and I felt fine. There wasn't anything energetic going on. Then when as soon as I took the DMT, like I said, that was the catalyst then for things kind of moving around. And this, again, it reminded me very much of the ayahuasca experience, whereby the first night of an ayahuasca retreat, there's a lot of purging that goes on, a lot of energy stuff that goes on. This is where all the kind of like the bad juju sort of comes out. And then once that's come out, then the kind of the subsequent nights is a lot more for kind of it's less of that sort of energy, and you're more focused on sort of doing the work. So yeah, I was kind of like unprepared for that last night, and I'm interested in exploring just harmless on its own, and just seeing where that goes. But it was fascinating sort of combination.
Yes, and it is a beautiful thing. Like I have friends where they were brand new to it, and I'd been telling them about how I work with it and everything, and they were just curious about trying it without DMT. And so I said, sure, I'll bring over my dab rig, and I'll let you experience what it's like to freebase the harmalas. And they were blown away. They were like, I cannot believe this is like existed, and like I didn't know about it and everything. Now, obviously there's the downside is when you step over that line where it starts becoming essentially nauseating. But that line of the nauseating, or maybe some would call it overdosing or whatever, that's the line. That same line is the one to where it becomes a unique psychedelic on its own.
Okay.
So it's very interesting, that one.
I mean, I guess that's part of where it works well in combination with ayahuasca, because I really recognized now, having sort of seen the harmless on its own, I really recognize which part of the ayahuasca experience is the kind of harmless experience. And for sure, when you do ayahuasca, I mean, you purging is sort of very common. You are doing a lot of harmless, within one of these cups. So yeah, I think that's and certainly you do cross that threshold, because you get a lot of this kind of physical discomfort and nausea, like what you described. And yeah, I think there's something there. And again, it's this thing about kind of pushing your boundaries and going outside your comfort zone. I think that's where a lot of the deep work happens, is when you are just way outside your comfort zone, and then you're kind of so grateful to come back into it. But yeah,
true.
Yeah, it's like absolutely fascinating substance, and I think it's I would just kind of mirror just what you said. I think it's worth people just checking out just the harmless experience, because it's there's something of value there, I believe.
Right, especially the folks like us that are curious about these kinds of things, where you've done ayahuasca and you smoked DMT, so you've got that. You kind of have a different perspective of it when you go back to the ayahuasca, of like, oh, okay, like I feel like that one time when I smoked DMT, like I feel like I'm there, like I'm really communing with that molecule. Yeah. But then when it's the same sort of thing with the MAOI. When you've done that by itself, enough of it to where you can't ignore it. Like if you just do a small amount, like microdosing or something like that, like that's kind of a new thing. I don't know if you've been seeing that much, but like I've been seeing a lot more people that are microdosing with the vine, and And
I've not seen
that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about actually like taking enough of it that you are clearly communing with that in another lane besides just microdosing. You know, to the point where you have enough harmless in you that your balance is a little bit off, and you know what I mean. You're definitely feeling so relaxed. That's one of the big
I
time.
I think that's what they call
so
like the mariachi on the sort of like the drunkenness of the harmless. That kind of there's a certain sway to it when you get to that point. But I mean, I've heard a lot of people doing things like ayahuasca only brews where it doesn't have the DMT component at all, and people are just drinking just a pure ayahuasca vine. I think that's quite a common thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm definitely seeing that more and more as well. Yeah, more people just doing the vine. I think that's been like a common thing down in Colombia, and not just Colombia, but like a lot of other places down there in the rainforest. But I guess the question I had was when you took your MAOIs, I'm assuming it was HCl from the Syrian rue.
I don't know. I can only assume that was the source of it. But yeah, it was.
Okay.
there was a vendor. So you could buy it legally online, and it was I don't want to. I can't actually remember what it is, but yeah, I'm pretty sure it was like the HCl fume rate. I think I'd have to go and check to see, but yeah, it was basically the kind of extracted powder, presumably from Syrian rue, but I don't actually know. It could have been from any other, source.
Gotcha.
But yeah, and
the reason I asked is like,
and
it's not very often that you meet someone that knows about it or actually has a relationship with it or whatever. But like, but yeah, that's the one that I utilize as well. Like when I'm using it internally is the HCl.
Yeah.
And I've actually, with that same HCl, I've actually used it intranasally as well. Like you know how they use the hape with the little caripe pipe, right? So so I would instead of putting hape in the caripe, I would put the harmala HCl, and man, let me tell you, that stuff burns.
I was gonna say because the taste of it was foul last night. It has a very caustic. I put it under my tongue, and there was a very caustic feel to it. So yeah, I can't imagine what that's like to go up your nose.
Yeah, right. And I don't know about yours, but the stuff that I have, like when you look at it real close, it looks crystally. It has like this weird texture. Even though it's like most people would say, "Oh, that's powder." It's not powder in the same way that other things are powder. It's not as micronized.
Right.
It has like these tiny, tiny little shards, but they're not shards like I've seen with Molly or various other things,
so you wouldn't recommend it then, putting it up your nose?
So I wouldn't recommend it, considering that I mean, again, not to say that I would never do it again, because I have done it, but man, especially if you're not expecting it, it burns so bad. And then 5 minutes later, you're like, okay. Now I'm feeling the benefits of it.
Yeah.
but for those first couple of minutes, wow, yeah, it's definitely a shock to the system.
I can imagine. Yeah, I don't. After tasting it, I don't think it's one I would want to put up my nose. It's
yeah, it's nuts. It really is one of these super potent things that it has so much benefit when utilized the right way. I know people, several, that they love that ceremony even more than the 5. I guess they resonate with that. Like I said, I used to call it the extended state DMT ceremony, but that's essentially what it was. Is just the harmless and then the DMT. But they prefer that to the 5-MeO, and I see why, because it really is such a beautiful, when done right and with the right intention and stuff, it's really like a shortened ayahuasca journey.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I mean, also they're
It
just
can be.
very, very different tools as well. Like I think, like with the 5-MeO experience and the DMT NN-DMT experience, just so different.
Yep.
That I mean, I use 5-MeO like very specifically. Like whereas I think DMT is a bit more. Can be a bit more like sort of Swiss Army knifey, like you can you can do DMT just to have like an awesome experience and just to sort of like just to really should sort of like bathe in wonder, whereas I think 5-MeO I don't know is the gravity of it I think is a kind of different. I think DMT is fun. I'll put it out, or can be fun. And 5-MeO, I don't think I would ever describe 5-MeO as fun. I think it's beautiful. I think it's like it's like one of the most beautiful spiritual experiences ever. But I wouldn't say it's fun.
Yeah. I would agree with that for sure. Definitely not fun, but a peak experience. I would say, you know what, the peak of human experience. I really don't see anything that could top that. You know. But
well, I think the 5-MeO, I would say I'm not even sure it is human experience. I think 5-MeO is possibly like it is. To me, it's almost like detached from your humanity. It's
exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is that when you come back, and you are back in your body, you're like, how does this even exist?
Yeah.
Right.
So I would say it's a peak conscious experience. I think that's how I would describe 5-MeO. Whereas I think DMT is more of a peak human experience. It feels much more human to me, particularly when it is something like oral, like ayahuasca or something. It feels very organic and earthy. Whereas 5-MeO is what is a human being anymore? It's
I know, so true. There's been a couple of ceremonies where we blurred the lines, where we did what they called the power and the glory, where you combine the DMT and 5-MeO.
Wow!
And that, it's so crazy, but so therapeutic. Like, when they say, the medicine gives you exactly what you need, like that is truly what it is. Like, some people, they get a more, I guess you would say, a more spiritual DMT experience, and some get this colorful 5 experience, and some get this like beautiful like ayahuasca type experience. I mean, it really does cater to whatever like your intentions are and how you're approaching the sacred space and everything. So it really is amazing. It really is. It's something I wouldn't recommend it for anyone, but yes, for the people that are brave enough, definitely. Yeah,
I don't think it's the same with anything. If it's what it's that thing like whatever works for you. If I would never like say everyone should drink ayahuasca, everyone should do DMT or whatever. But if for those people who want to, then these experiences are there to be taken, and if that's whatever your sort of bag is, go for it.
Yeah, and I can tell you, just from my perspective, not only just working with the medicine, but holding space, facilitating, just the way that 5-MeO in particular has the ability to be a catalyst for expansion like no other. There's something about it that the experience that really does just cause this evolution, or can. I shouldn't say that every single person, but generally speaking, I've seen so many people evolve to the point where, like, when I speak with them to have another like integration session a few months after the experience, their life is in a completely different place. And it's so beautiful to see firsthand. And
yeah,
I'm sure you get it. You get what I mean by that.
I do, but I think there's another side to that coin, and that is certainly what I think with 5-MeO in particular. I do think that it also has the potential for, basically out of control ego inflation from that. I see it more with 5-MeO than I do with other substances. I mean, this is certainly, I've made a few videos talking about a few people who are like, have had 5-MeO experiences and now think they know something. And I think this is, these are kind of like very anecdotal things, so it's kind of unfair to say that it's 5-MeO that caused this. Maybe it could have been any other psychedelic. It just so happened in these cases it was 5-MeO. But
you're right.
I think there is a thing there where I notice it more with 5-MeO about people becoming very confident in what I think are very not accurate, not correct worldviews or ideologies, and can end up becoming sort of quite destructive. But because the 5-MeO experience is so transformative and so powerful, it gives you a newfound confidence and assuredness in something which might be complete bullshit.
You're so right. You are so right. I cannot tell you. I had a very close friend, who that happened to. It can be the most transformative without a doubt, but it also, that transformation could also take on something that ends up being quite concerning for sure.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of one of the things I always say to people, like when you're signing up for a transformative experience, think about what that means, that you are going to transform yourself. You are going to turn into something that you are not now, and make sure that you've got this kind of checks and balances in place. That thing that you are turning into is not a monster. You want to make sure that you are, sculpt as you become, very plastic and moldable and shapeable. Make sure that you've got the sort of, the anchors and the framework and the stuff to make that into a positive thing, because it's so easy to get lost in the, in the fucking, bizarre la land and sort of become convinced of some very strange ideas. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think as an experience, I think these things are amazing.
Oh yeah, I mean, truly, from, again, what's gone on in my life and the others that I've seen firsthand, just so radically, and again, it's not going to be the same for everyone, mm-hmm. But when I take a look at especially some of my friends and family, they are on a different path that is like about evolution, truly becoming their greatest version, and looking back to where they were, that the pre-ceremony, it was a completely different place. And again, I would say the same thing for me. Before I had my first 5-MeO experience, I was very much in a I would say that I wasn't like suicidal or anything like that, but I was pretty convinced that I was going to have to be spending the rest of my life kind of pretending to be happy.
Yeah, suffering.
Pretending. And then it was, that was my intention going in, was like, I want to experience and admire the divinity in everything. And I surely got what I was asking for, that experience, that ceremony, because I can honestly say that changed my perspective on so much, on everything, and really, really, really made me know what I am, how I serve these things that are just so crucial. I every day, when I wake up, I give thanks for not just that experience, but what that has done to unfold who I am today, and the ways that I show up now. And so, and on that note, thank you for how you show up. This is
Thank you, man.
You really, seriously, you are just a lighthouse that I always love tuning into, and yeah, very much appreciate the work that you do.
Well, thanks, man. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and yeah, please, let's chat some more on in future shows.
Yeah, we'll do.
Awesome.
Thanks so much, and if I don't talk to you before then, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Cheers, dude. Likewise.
All right, blessings.
Okay, I'm going to really run over with the amount of time that I do in this live stream, but I can see there's a couple more people with their hands up, so I'm going to do one last call, and I'm going to have to make it a little bit closer. I'm really sorry that I'd have to sort of cut it short. I'd ideally want to talk to everyone, but yeah, I've got sort of the real world is ingressing into hyperspace. So I'm going to go with DRBTC as the last caller. So, dude, you should have a thing where you can come up and speak. If you're still there, I appreciate you been waiting a long time.
I am here. Thanks for taking the question. I'll try to be quick.
Awesome.
I discovered 5-MeO-DMT within this last year, and I've now had maybe over a dozen experiences. And one of the things when we talk about doses, it's probably good to clarify whether or not it's free-base 5-MeO-DMT or salt like a 5-MeO-DMT fumarate.
Yeah.
So what I was using was fumarate, and I started with 20 milligrams. And the most beautiful experience of my life. And so I've had some time to work with this material with some other people, and I've helped a handful of other people as well. And one thing that I've noticed is that pretty consistently with the 5-MeO-DMT fumarate, doses around 18 to 20 milligrams seem to be about right for people to have that really big experience that we're hoping for. Mm-hmm. We've had some experiments with lower doses that have been really beautiful, but we've seen a couple challenging experiences as well. And those challenging experiences, though, seem to be more in that middle range of around 15 milligrams or so, not so much with the higher doses. And when trying to figure out how to help someone from more of a therapeutic perspective and trying to figure out what is the right dose for a person, it seems to me that the ego has a greater ability to hang on in a pathological way with maybe more of the higher immediate doses compared to like the 20 milligram plus doses. Mm-hmm. Do you have any thoughts on dosing, and can you maybe clarify dosing between like the free base and the 5-MeO-DMT fumarate?
I couldn't say much about the difference between the free base and the fumarate, because as far as I'm aware, I've not had any experience of the fumarate. I think it's only ever been the free base that I've done.
It's 25% weight by salt. So just you take whatever someone does fumarate, you multiply that by about 0.75, and they'll get you a free base equivalent.
Okay. So yeah, I couldn't really say too much about the difference between the two. But in terms of the dosing thing, I think this comes back into what I was discussing with some of the early callers, and that I think you're right in that I think particularly when people first come into these experiences and there is a hurdle to be overcome, then I think, and this is particularly true of my own situation, I needed a sledgehammer to break down that wall that I'd spent my entire adult life, or childhood and establishing. So you need something, like you say, that will overcome the ego, the defenses, whatever that's locking you into that old paradigm. And yeah, certainly a powerful dose of something, but be it 5-MeO, ayahuasca, whatever, something that will bust open the dam, which will then let you get at the rest of the stuff that you can work with. Now, I think once you've done that, I don't think it necessarily needs to be big doses all the way home. And what I certainly found is that after having one of the big experiences, then you could do a lot more. Once the gates open, so to speak, then doing smaller experiences allowed me to more consciously focus on certain things. I don't think it necessarily need to be completely out there every single time. In fact, I think that actually might become unproductive to a certain point, because what I find is that there's a lot more. I think what we're trying to get to here is that the ego can sort of navigate within this new thing. Now, if you're constantly just annihilating the ego every time, I don't think that's productive. You're basically trying to retrain yourself, aren't you? You're trying to rework yourself into something new. So that's the kind of the model that I follow, in that kind of like, particularly when I go on retreat or something like that, I tend to, start biggish, and, sometimes I'll start big and then do a few more big ones, but then I kind of like ease my way out of it. I kind of step down. I'm not always going for the kind of like the full massive doses every time. So that's kind of what I follow.
May I clarify just a little bit, because we're on the same page. What we've been doing is we've been trying to help people have the experience, like the big experience that's life shifting, but not multiple times. And so what we're trying to figure out is what's those that's right for some people, where you kind of avoid that middle territory where it's just terrifying to the point that it's not therapeutic. But once someone has that big experience, then we don't go back to 5-MeO-DMT. They've had what it was that medicine intended to give them, and then we work with low doses of something else, maybe like a low dose of LSD, for example, which is actually a really beautiful integration drug.
Yeah.
And that seems to help people make sense of that bigger experience, so they can recall more elements of it, and then they can figure out, well, how do I weave this into the everyday fabric of my life? But more specifically, what I want to avoid is having someone be terrified for an hour and then say, well, shit, I'm not doing that again.
Yeah. I'm totally, I couldn't agree more on that. The halfway point, the kind of the limbo point where, they kind of like the ego is clutching on. You've still got enough awareness, like, of to know that this doesn't feel right, and you everything about your, like, we talked about earlier, like your existing model of reality is saying, emergency, something's going wrong, I'm dying, it's all wrong. So that middle place, I completely agree, is the worst place you can end up. And it's very counterintuitive, because if you say to to people like, I'm getting into psychedelics, what should I do? Then it would kind of make sense to to go for something not too big, but particularly if I think when people are dealing with these deep problems, that's where I think sometimes it's better to just like jump in the deep end. I think just to sort of try and balance that out in a kind of like a harm reduction way, I'd say for sure test the water first with like a small dose, just if that's that would be a sort of sensible thing to do. But
handshake doses, that's what we call it.
Yeah,
handshake
exactly.
Doses.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the point where it's like, okay, I think I'm ready to do the work now. Yeah, that's where it's like, okay, if you're on board and you're signed up for the work, then you are signing up for some pretty fucking heavy times. Are you ready for this? Are you ready for a transformative experience? Are you ready to transform your life, to transform your understanding of yourself? Think about what that means, because that's what's going to happen. But I completely agree that sort of that middle ground can be hell, absolute hell.
Yeah. Well, cool. Thank you so much for all that you do for the community. I'm actually working on some research that I can't talk about publicly right now, but if you want to contact me offline, feel free to. You may find it pretty interesting. And again, thanks for everything that you do. Yeah,
sure. And likewise, like yourself and a few other people we talked to tonight, people talking around doing this sort of work and building the community. So thanks to you, mate. Thanks for sort of, what you do and sort of taking the time to call in and have a conversation with me. I'm really grateful for it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right,
mate.
Take care.
You too. Bye. Okay. This has been an awesome show. This has been, I think this is the perfect wrap up for this format in 2021, and I wanted to give a huge shout out. We've not done as many calls tonight, but the conversations have been superb, I think. So guys, every one of you who I've spoken to, thank you so much. I've loved talking to all the people I've spoken to this last couple of months since I started doing this format, and I'm look forward to doing more of it next year when Beyond the Breakthrough returns in its own channel. I say I'm going to spin it off into a side channel, and guys, I wish you all the best in whatever you get up to over the holiday season, and I will catch up with you all in 2022. I say I'll still be around on Discord, but there'll be no new videos or live streams until the new year. So on that note, all the best. You're all awesome, and yeah, I wish you happy holidays, whatever that holiday might be. And on that note, I shall end the stream now. Bye.